It all starts with a single question asked to an anonymous caller. What do you think happens when we die? And from there, the conversation goes in completely unexpected directions. Some speak with certainty, others with doubt. Some are still trying to make sense of it all. I'm Zach Ansell, and this is When We Die Talks, a podcast about death, meaning, and how that shapes the way we live. This podcast was born from my own fears around death and the need to talk about it. Thank you for being a part of this conversation. I'm glad you're here. This episode is brought to you by the Death Deck. Want to talk to your family members about the future but don't know how to start? The Death Deck is a lively game that uses multiple choice questions and a dose of humor to help start conversations about death, dying, and illness. Learn new and interesting things about your friends and family members while becoming prepared for the future. And new this fall, the Death Deck introduces the Dementia Deck, a planning tool to talk about the type of care and treatment you'd want if you were living with dementia. All Death Deck products are available at thedeathdeck.com. Hey, welcome back or welcome here if this is your first time. I've been reading this philosophy paper called Existence is Evidence of Immortality by Michael Huemer, and it's one of those pieces that hits both sides of my brain, the philosophical and the mathematical. Huemer starts with a simple idea, that it's nearly impossible to imagine space having an edge, because no matter where you are, you can always ask, what's 1 meter beyond that? And the same he says is true of time. If we start to imagine it having a beginning, we have to picture a moment before time began, which doesn't really make much sense. Time, like space, might be infinite in both directions. And from that, he argues something even wilder, and here's a quote from the paper. You would be more likely to be living now if persons could live many times than if persons could only live once in the history of the universe. It's such a strange, beautiful way to think about existence. This idea that the fact we're here at all might be evidence that we've been here before or will be again. It actually reminded me of this Buddhist story about a blind turtle and a golden ring, where a turtle living at the bottom of the ocean surfaces once every 100 years, and the odds of it poking its head through the floating ring are said to be about the same as being born a human. Two totally different ways of thinking about it. One logical, one poetic, but both pointing to the same truth. It's a miracle we exist at all. Just something interesting I wanted to share. Maybe it'll make you think a little bit differently. I'll link the paper in the show notes for anyone who wants to check it out. This week, we're going international again. Our anonymous caller comes from Perth, Australia, but also has deep family roots in Colombia. That combination gives her a fascinating view of how culture shapes our relationship with death. In Australia, she says, people often meet death with humor, a kind of cultural instinct to keep things light. But beneath that ease, there's a loneliness to how grief unfolds, often in private and without much space to talk about it. But in Colombia, death is communal. It's something to be mourned and celebrated together through family, stories, and music. We talked about the beauty of that contrast, about spirituality and religion, and about what it means to stay connected even after someone is gone. One quick note before we dive in, there won't be a new episode next week on October 29th. I'll be away on a meditation retreat, taking a week to unplug, but there will be a new Saturday contemplation on November 2nd. And since it's the first one of the month, it'll be available to everyone. All right, let's jump into the call. I hope you enjoy.
Hi there.
Hey, how's it going?
Hi, it's going well, thank you. How about you?
Good. I love the
Okay.
different dial tone that I got. And as I was calling, Google Voice was like, oh, we're routing this through, international. And so it makes me feel so fancy. So thank you. Thank you for being willing to do this.
No worries.
I feel like right off the top, I do need to say, I think for you and for the listeners, I had such a struggle with getting this scheduled. And I'm so sorry that I was just... hopefully through this call I can prove I'm not an idiot. But man, I was struggling with the time difference. So we'll get into where you're calling from in a second. But I just wanted to say off the top, thank you for bearing with me while I was figuring that all out. I appreciate it. And I'm thankful for you staying up late and for me getting up early to make this happen. So I'm really excited to do this call.
Yeah, of course. Me too, yeah.
So maybe right off the top, just kind of briefly, why did you even want to do a call about death?
I think death is something that people kind of shy away from a lot in general, and you can't really have kind of conversation about it without kind of people sometimes taking offense
Yeah.
or, not really getting into it and sort of just treating it as like something fun, which it can be something fun to talk about. But I just, things of like these kinds of topics, the macabre has always really interested me. It's just fascinating. It really is.
That's awesome. I also love that you dropped the word fun because I am like 90% sure at some point in this call, probably towards the end, I'll say something like, "Oh man, that was such a fun conversation." And then I always am like, "Oh wait, hold on." Like I don't want that to be weird or awkward, but I think you're right. Having conversations, deep conversations, connecting conversations, yeah, of course they're fun because it's like you get to connect with another human. And especially with this, I say this sometimes to the US callers that I talk to, but especially you and I, there is a very, very, very small chance that you and I would ever meet and talk. And then even if we did meet and talk,
Yeah.
we probably wouldn't have a conversation around death. And so I love that this is connecting us and I'm looking forward to chatting with you. And so maybe I've kind of teased it out a little bit. Maybe you can give an idea of where you're calling from so people can know,
Mhm.
and then your favorite book and why.
Oh, okay. That those are some good things. Okay, so for where I'm calling from, I come from Perth, Western Australia, the side that no one goes to. Very cool. Quite fun here. Quite fun, no tourists.
That
Um,
does sound great, honestly.
no, it honestly is underrated, definitely. And my favorite book. Oh, dear Lord, I have so many.
You can name a couple
This
if you
isn't
want to as well. It doesn't have to be just one.
Oh, yeah, no. It's just because it's so unexpected.
I know.
I would have to say, oh, you know what? One of them is The Book Thief, which is kind
Mm,
of on brand.
yeah,
Death.
that's a great book.
Um, yeah, it's it's fantastic. And then another would be it is actually this one rendition of Little Red Riding Hood done in kind of a Brothers Grimm setting. I forget who the author is, but she does this kind of like a dark take on it,
Mm,
and it's just it's gorgeous. It's such a good book. It's called The Werewolf, I think.
okay.
It's so in depth. It's so grim. I love it.
Awesome. And yeah, thank you for like digging in and really figuring out the hard questions there because your favorite book that is a challenging question.
It is, yeah. Oh dear Lord, it is. But got through it. Got through
You
it.
did. You survived. And now to the easy question, the big
Finally.
question, and we'll just see where this takes us. But what do you think happens when we die?
Oh Lord, what do we think? You know, people like whenever I ask people this, like personally, they always say kind of like one thing. It could be this or that or the other. And I'm gonna be a little bit, weird and say
Perfect.
that I think multiple things happen. I
Okay.
think it is different for everybody. I'm a very spiritual person at heart. I've had a lot of spiritual encounters. I feel a lot of different types of energies, and it's just a little bit crazy to kind of say aloud, but I feel it is true. So people stay after they die, that their spirits, they're restless. Reincarnation, I'm open to that idea. Heaven or hell could be a grand possibility. You could go into nothingness. That scares me the most out of anything. But
Yeah.
I feel the way in which we project ourselves and what kind of we internalize could very well happen to us.
Mm.
It makes sense to me. I don't know if you need clarification on that, but
I mean,
um,
we'll dig into all of that.
yeah.
It's interesting, and I think this is always the part of the conversation where I have so many questions, and I'm like, which direction do I want to go? And I think one of the ones, because I've had one other person kind of mention something similar to this, where it's death meets us where we are, and some of us are, religious and think that we're going to go to heaven, and so that, death meets us in that way. And so I'm kind of curious if, I don't know, parsing through what you said, because my fear
Oh,
is, my fear with
yeah.
this is I have been a nothingness believer, which, like you said, is
Oh, I
terrifying
see.
and probably why I started this project because I have these fears and anxieties. So when you say it shows up in multiple ways, I'm trying not to put words in your mouth and try not to pull in the other call that I just referenced.
Oh no, of course.
So for me, and now I'm like, now this feels like a therapy session. I'm like, so if I keep on believing in nothingness, does that mean that's what I'm gonna get? I'm curious of like how you think it shows up for us, and if I need to panic even more than I already am.
On okay, this is it. It is a hard question
Yeah,
because you can never really answer for sure.
totally.
I don't think we're ever gonna get an answer. But what I do believe will happen is that it happens in the way that it is necessary for us
Mm,
and a way in which we also project. They kind of go hand in hand. Let's say you want to go to heaven. Let's say you want to go to heaven, but especially kind of in a Christian belief, I'm pretty sure some Christians think like this. Maybe you don't go to heaven straight away. Maybe you go to purgatory because there are
yeah.
some things that you need to resolve, or maybe you believe in that, but you get stuck on this plane of existence in a kind of a limbo state, like many spirits, because something may have happened and your spirit never got resolved. Like basically, you have unfinished business. I think it pops up in those kinds of ways. So if you believe in nothingness, there is a chance that it might just be nothingness, but then you have to kind of look at the fact that it's your fear. That's something that you don't want to happen. So it would be quite contradictory if that's what you got, because
Mm,
the energy that you are putting out is you do think that it's going to happen, but it's a negative sort of energy of something that you don't want to happen. Your spirit is kind of restless with that, and I
yeah.
feel like it'll be very ironic if that's what happened. If that makes any
It
sense.
does.
Okay.
It's also kind of cruel, right? If that's what happens, then it's kind of like it's
It
like a
is.
punishment, right? And so, okay, if that's what this was all about, then that's kind of unfortunate, but okay. But I do love this kind of idea because we all are individuals and we all have our own beliefs, and like you said, we're never going to know until I guess we know, and that becomes very interesting. But it'd be really unfortunate for people who believe very strongly in something, like you're saying, like in Christianity, like heaven, and then it to not turn out that way and be like, and if there is awareness, if there is self, and it sounds like your idea, well, that's actually maybe an interesting question because with nothingness, but I think by and large, it feels like your idea still has this idea of self. But like if you still have your identity of self and then you end up one of the other options that isn't heaven or something, then you're like, oh, I'm disappointed or whatever. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
But I also feel like it's very beautiful and poetic the way that you're talking about it. Where does this
I think
where does
so.
this
Yeah.
belief and idea come from? And you said that you're very spiritual. Is there religious background? I know at
Yeah.
least, and I think that's something that like I'm teetering on the edge of talking about, and I really do want to talk about this because at least in the United States, I would say a lot of people now will say, I'm spiritual but not religious. And I think
Yeah.
what we will probably get into at some point in this call, but I'm also very
Yeah.
curious about the culture of death there and how it's
Oh, yeah.
different or similar to how it is here. Because I think that's one of the big things with reaching out to people internationally is to try to get
Yeah.
voices that aren't from the United States. But I am curious,
Yeah.
being around the world, what the influence is like. And that was a lot of questions and rambling. So I'm just going to stop talking now.
I You're fine. I have a plethora of things. You're gonna be very excited. I'm gonna have a field day with this. So let's get to my religious beliefs first. I've had a long history with them. I was born into kind of Catholic Christian family, and I believed in that for a while. Never went to church or anything really, unless it was like once in a blue moon. But I sort of grew up with this idea of God. Something's happened in my life, and I became agnostic. And
Okay.
through that, I then started branching out into other religions, trying to find out what worked for me. I looked into reading about just the basics of every other religion, and I really read into spirituality. I got into that for a while, like a lot of spiritualism. I got into
Can
paganism
can I
even.
stop you for one
I got
second?
into
Because I'm
Oh
actually
yeah.
now I'm like very curious, and I'm so sorry to cut you off, but I didn't grow up religious, and so I talk
Mm,
about. I feel like now I'm finding spirituality. I think I don't really know what that means, And so I'm actually very curious because you
Yeah.
did describe, religion, and then you're like, I found spirituality. And so can you maybe share a little bit more about what that maybe difference feels like to you and what that means? I'm actually really curious about that
Yeah.
too. Just piling on the questions for you.
Yeah. You're fine. I've got them backed up in my head. Um, so, so with people saying that, I usually see that there is a common factor of them saying they're not religious, as in they don't want to take any form of sort of practice or do anything that kind of requires any kind of devotion, but they do believe that there is something out there, that there is
Mm.
meaning for us, because again, humans love meaning, they love
Yeah.
attaching things, putting them in boxes, and it's better than thinking about, there's
Nothingness.
nothing out there. There's nothingness. It's horrifying to me. I
Yeah.
hate it.
Yeah.
But for me, I always like believed in God. I always believed that there was a high power. I still do, but we'll get into that in a minute. The main differences I saw was that with religion, you look to something higher than yourself in a way in which it is personified, and that you have to follow very certain rules and like rules,
Yeah.
and
There's like guidelines.
it's all about instruction. There's guidelines.
Yeah.
It's very classic. It's very traditional. Whereas spirituality means to strip all that away and to look outwards onto nature instead of
Mm.
upwards into the heavens, so to say.
Mm.
And it's looking around us, looking at humanity and saying, this is what we should be focusing on. We should be focusing on the earth and what is out there in terms of energies rather than one being.
That was
And so
beautiful.
that's the big difference that I saw.
That was beautiful.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Yeah, of course, of course. And that ties into what I'm about to say. So I went into spirituality, then I went into a little bit of paganism. I explored Wicca very briefly. I explored other routes that I didn't go down, and it was a dark time in my life for its personal reasons,
Yeah.
but I decided to stick to kind of this sense of spiritualism. And funnily enough, after a few more life events, I went back to Christianity, but not in the sense that you really might think, because I combine both of those ideologies I told you about, and I don't really go to church because I have my own traumas with religion, definitely, but I believe that, there is a God and he is loving and he loves us, but it works in tandem with the universe, with nature, and with energies, and that those energies, they're so, like, it's so potent and powerful, and they work hand in hand. And, I look at things like the Bible as basic instructions on how to live to make your life easier rather than something that you'll be punished or condemned for.
Mm.
It is like the things that the Bible tells you not to do, like don't sin because of this. It isn't saying don't sin, otherwise I'm going to punish you. It's saying don't sin because you are going to hurt yourself. Of course, all of these like guidelines seem so strict, but obviously it's within moderation, and that there are so many things probably not on the page, and so many different contexts, and it was written so long ago. But just the most important rules that I really take to heart are just love each
Yeah.
other as you would love yourself, and just love God. That's it. Just
Yeah.
love. That's kind of my principle. Yeah. So not sure if that was convoluted or not.
No,
I
it was
I
great.
get a lot of I get a lot of backlash for it. People do not like my view, but
Well,
I
that's the great thing about this is
it's fine.
nobody will know it's you.
Exactly.
I think the one thing that came up for me was like when you're talking about God and the Bible and these ideas,
Mhm.
it also reminds me of, and I've talked about this a couple of times. Those are also very foundational in other religions, right? These like base tenets, like they all have the same general ideas of be kind to others, take care of others, love each other, like it's very foundational. And like you said, I do think a lot of it just comes back to love and taking care of each other. The other thing that I mentioned that I think would be interesting to tap into is what is the death culture like in Australia? I think there's very few places in the world that really like to talk about death. I've talked to some people from Mexico where it's Day of the Dead, and you think that there's this culture that is really like embracing death. And from the couple people that I talked to, and of course that doesn't, that's not, every single person feels this way. But from what I've heard is death is very much alive those couple days around Day of the Dead. And otherwise, it's really not talked about. And there is influence from the United States on Mexico. But there's also, I think, some like, and I'm blanking on the word because it's early and my brain's not fully functioning yet. But there's like some concern of if I talk about death, then it's going to happen. I can't think of it and it's going to drive me crazy.
Superstition?
Yes, exactly. See, you are the smart.
Yeah.
I'm not proving myself to not be stupid on this call, I think. It's still happening.
No, you're doing fine. You're doing fine.
There's definitely this superstition around it. And so I'm curious,
Oh, yeah.
what is the death culture like there? And maybe that'll kind of give an idea to the listeners of some differences, or, is this still very kind of like westernized culture?
I'm going to give you two perspectives here because
Awesome.
I've grown up in two places. My heritage is in Colombia.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you a South American perspective as well. And I will give you the perspective here. So here it is extremely Western. It's serious and yet unserious at the same time. With the unseriousness, Australians are usually, they have this kind of blanket of tall poppy syndrome. If you're not aware of what tall poppy syndrome is, it's basically this not caring, nonchalant attitude. People don't really ask each other how you are, or if it is, it's very surface level, kind of like, oh yeah, no, I'm fine, or yeah, no, it's whatever. If you do anything and you try and you love something, you're seen as try hard pretty much, and you are made fun of, really. And it's just very kind of uncaring. And that's one of the things about Australia that I probably hate the most, is it is just a wide spread mess of that. And with death, that can happen sometimes. One of our prime ministers, we don't have presidents here, we have prime ministers. One of our prime ministers went swimming, never came back, and no one cared.
Really?
I mean, he had swimming schools named after him.
Yeah.
That's like some of the schools in the country, but like pretty much that's it. I mean, we're just very unserious as a nation. One of our prime ministers shat himself in a McDonald's and everybody laughed at him. It was on the news. It was hilarious. And that's it. We don't put them on pedestals. We just don't care. They really do need to prove themselves to us. But with death, I mean, as a whole country, I think we do take it pretty serious.
Okay.
We had a lot of, we did have use of guns way back 19 something. Please don't quote me on that.
I was gonna say it was like the 80s or 90s, I think. Yeah.
80s, 90s, around just the 1900s in general. And we had a shooting. Maybe 30 people died, or a lesser number than that. And the government thought that's it.
Yeah.
That was the one and final straw, and we had tons of restrictions on guns since then. You have to go through many licenses, many registrations to own them. You can only own them in particular ways. You can only use them for particular things. You can only store them in particular manners. It's very, very heavy-handed stuff. So no one here really owns a gun unless you are out in the country.
Yeah.
Or you do
and
hunting,
you need it.
You don't own a gun.
I've seen some of the things out in the outback, and I'm terrified.
No, they're fine. Just don't fuck with them, and they won't fuck with you.
Perfect. It's a good mentality to have.
They'll attack you. Oh, magpies will attack you too. Sorry.
See, it just continues, and by the end of this, you're like, oh wait, hold on, and there's this other thing. So.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, okay. I can see where I've gone wrong. Many things can kill you and will kill you. But just be fine. I'm still alive.
Yeah.
I'm still living.
You're making it happen. I'm a dumb American though, so I don't know. I don't know if I'd survive.
You'll be fine. But the thing that'll probably kill you the most is cancer, because we have horrible sun here. Yeah, sun will kill you. Quite sad, actually.
Yeah, totally.
Really sad. But no, we do deal with death kind of in a sense of seriousness, but we also don't really, there's no kind of stigma around it, but we just kind of use a lot of humor around it. It's like if you're going to mention it, it'll be in a funny, humorous way, like depending on who you're with. It's just very kind of like, oh, okay, well, someone's dead. That's either really sad or it's like, oh, okay. And then you move on with your day. You don't really think about it twice.
Yeah.
For some people, I work the opposite way, just for clarification. I see it's a culture here.
Yeah.
I definitely have seen it. Yeah. But differently. So Colombia works a little bit differently, and it is kind of like Mexico in the sense that like it is very spiritual. Like we were part of the Inca Empire at some point. We've had a lot of deaths, a lot of like it is a different world. It is a third world country. We've dealt with a lot of slavery, and we only really gained independence in the 1900s, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, or like the late 1800s, if anything. And it's crazy, and death there it's a very serious topic. You don't really mention it, but it's like a very heavy thing. A lot of people believe in it. It's Christianity is like one of the main, and Catholicism, main kind of dominating religion. People definitely believe in spirits, superstition, that kind of thing. And so death is treated with a lot of grace. It is treated very quietly, very sympathetically. But at the same time, you do kind of mourn differently. A lot of times you'll see mourning happening with a party. It happened recently, actually. I went back there, and I called him uncle, but one of my cousins had recently passed.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Due to a condition, I never actually got to fully process his death until I was there with my family. And we were partying before. Then we had the morning session. We said things about him that we loved. We put notes. We did videos. We took photos together, lit candles. And then after that, it was back to partying. It's a celebration of life,
Yeah.
really, like a celebration for him, saying the things that we loved about him, taking that time. And you mourn really, in Australia, you might oftentimes mourn alone because it is kind of Western in that way.
Yeah.
Where mourning, it does happen with people, but people really kind of seclude themselves. I find that especially in Latin cultures, it is the opposite. Everyone comes together and you really kind of lean on each other.
Yeah.
That's not to say that death is talked about a ton. There's no stigma around it, but it's just very quiet, very respectful.
Yeah.
And then when you mourn really closely. Yeah.
Yeah. And not that you're like, oh yeah, I had this death that happened in Australia and then, this that happened in Colombia, but showing, you even said it like straight out of, you didn't think you really got to like process and like grieve your uncle's death until you were there in community with other people. And so I think that is the hard thing.
Yeah.
I haven't had to deal with much death. I've, lost 3 of my 4 grandparents, which is one of those things where I don't want to say it's not sad, right? But it's also like they all died 70s and 80s, and so it's like that's kind of what you expect, right? Like that's what's going to happen. If things go your way, you'll live to be 70 or 80. And if you're really fortunate, you'll live longer. And, who knows? I don't know. I go back and forth on whether we're going to live longer or shorter, like if our lifespans are actually decreasing now with all the horrible things going on in the world. But I guess mostly what I'm saying is from talking to people and thinking about grieving, it's like, it is a very unfortunate thing that in this westernized culture or whatever, because I don't necessarily know if we're portraying ourselves to be strong or whatever it is, but this individualized grieving, which can be really hard on people because you don't want to show weakness, you don't want to, whatever you don't want to show, and then you just kind of have this thing that you're dealing with and not doing it in community. Whereas you're talking like, oh yeah, I was able to like actually process this when I was with my family and we were able to celebrate and have these amazing moments. Like I'll always remember with my grandpa, my mom's dad, and it was my cousins and my grandma and my mom and my uncle, and we were just like all sitting around his bed, as he's dying. And similar thing that you're talking about, like sharing stories about him and hearing stories from my grandma that, I had never heard about him, never known about him. And we were drinking whiskey because he loved whiskey, and just having this amazing experience as a family. And when my grandpa died on my dad's side, my dad and him had kind of a more challenging relationship. So this kind of sounds bad, but we didn't necessarily spend a ton of time talking about him. But his mom, who I knew, my great grandma, she was an amazing woman, just like total badass, just kind of like one of those like women that like pushed the boundaries in a time where that was not something that you did. And we just spent so much time after my grandpa's funeral talking about her, because she was such an important figure in my dad's life. And it's those things that are getting lost, those connections with family and this communal grieving, when we don't do it together, in this very, I'm going to say in this very individualized society, culture, whatever you want to call it, we internalize, we hold it in, and eventually that manifests in really bad ways. And so I love that you're able to give those two perspectives on two different cultures and how you balance that out. And so you haven't necessarily shared anything, and I'm not trying to like get you to share anything, but you've already kind of said that you do things differently than most Australians do. And so you kind of are bringing that. And hopefully I'm like 90% sure I did not write it down. You said Colombia, right? I don't want to keep on saying the wrong.
No, you're right.
And you're bringing kind of that influence in a little bit.
Definitely. It's they're two very different cultures, and they work kind of, it's like they're the same for opposite things. The culture in Colombia, it's so individualized for things like masculinity and mental health, which are not widespread, but with death and family, like those, family is the most important thing, which is why death is such an important thing. And I suppose that in kind of individualized cultures, as you said, which is primarily seen as Western, it's you take care of it on your own, because the values of community are so much lesser, because there is this idea of me, myself, and I, and it's this sense of self-preservation in a way, or just this sense of individualism that makes it impossible for you to really connect with people in this kind of way. But that strays a little bit away from the topic of death. So,
it's related. All this
related.
All of it comes back and makes sense in the final cut of the call. I just want to say that I'm so thankful that you're willing to do this. It was obviously a little bit of a challenge to get it scheduled, but not really anything super crazy, but just me, for some reason, messing up the time zones. Like, I think I messed it up like 7 or 8 times. And at one point was putting you 39 hours ahead of me, which is insane. So
I was very, very confused to see you put us on different days, and I was like, that does not make sense. But let me just
not my finest moment. Especially like I told you, like as a math major in college, like not really doing a great job at my 15-hour time conversion. But I want to thank you for bearing with me through that, and also just taking the time to have this call. I am going to ask you one last question before we kind of wrap up. And if you don't have anything, it's fine. But I don't know. I just feel like you've presented things so beautifully. And so I'm curious if maybe you have like a final message. I've never asked anybody this, and there's definitely a couple people who have been like, hey, can I say one last thing? And then they spew off something that's amazingly beautiful. But I'm just curious if you have any like final things that you like want to share.
Yeah, I do. I think that whatever happens, what I personally think that I want to happen when I die is I want to return to the universe. I just want to sprinkle over my essence into stardust, if you will. And it's the fact that death, we make it seem so kind of like death is this permanent thing when it's not. and we are alive in so many ways through the people that we love. We are always alive because we give them, each other. We give ourselves into other people, and they pick up on what we do, what we put out, and vice versa. And in that way, there'll always be a part of you that's alive. Always, always. We are all just bits and pieces of love in the universe, and it's still us, even when it's scattered. It's still us.
Oh,
So yeah, that's my last message.
that was beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
And again, thank you for
yeah,
doing
of
this.
course.
I'm so glad that we were able to have this conversation. You're probably headed to bed and I'm headed to start my day, which is wild, but thank you again so much.
Okay.
And we'll definitely have to stay in touch. Cause yeah, I just love this conversation.
Definitely. Me too. Me too. It was absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah. And I hope you have, well, I was going to say, I usually end it with, I hope you have a good rest of your day. I hope you have a good sleep, I guess is what I should say. And yeah, take care.
Thank you. Yes, have a great day. Have a
Thanks.
great day.
All right. Bye.
Yes, take care. Bye-bye.
I love how she closed out the call. We return to the universe, scattered like stardust, but still us. It's such a simple image, but it holds a lot. The idea that we keep living through what we've given, the love we've shared, the energy we've left behind, the small pieces of ourselves that other people carry forward. I think about how different cultures find ways to express that. Some through laughter, others through ritual, and sometimes just through remembering. However we do it, maybe that's what keeps us from disappearing completely. I'll catch you all in a couple weeks. Thanks for listening to this episode of When We Die Talks. These conversations don't offer answers, but they do open space to reflect, to feel less alone, and maybe to see things a little bit differently than before. If you'd like to explore your own beliefs out loud, you can apply to be an anonymous caller at whenwedietalks.com. And if a full call feels like too much, the voicemail is always open. Call 971-328-0864 and share what you believe happens when we die. Another way to support the podcast is through When We Die Talks Plus. Members not only get early access to episodes, but also every Saturday contemplation, short guided reflections to help you pause and sit with these questions in your own life. And of course, sharing the podcast with friends or leaving a review goes a long way too. Until next time, have a good life.
So I've been thinking a lot about death lately, and three sort of concepts come to mind. I recently had someone very close to me, essentially my brother and best friend who's the same age as me, commit suicide. And we've grown up together. He knew me very well. I knew him very well. And it's really hard to explain, but it was almost like he was my twin. And so losing him has put a lot of things into perspective, especially when regarding suicide and belonging in this world. But I was having this thought recently about being born alone and dying alone. And it made me realize that I think the fear of death is that we lose our community when we're gone. We spend our life building communities. We don't know what came before us when we were born. But when we die, we have this repertoire of people and interactions and experiences that are too precious for us to let go of. So the thought of whatever that means in the afterlife of leaving behind is almost unbearable to think about. And as I'm thinking about death and this journey and energy, I do believe that we leave energy when we die. But where does that energy go of our soul? That's just kind of the question, right? And if we're meant to start this battle alone, like who are we on the other side of this? What does building look on the other side of that? Or is there even building? Are we just beings? And we spend a lot of our lives building things and creating things, but also the thought of just being can be really hard to imagine. I've also experienced a lot of death in my life, so I think I have a little bit of different perspective in understanding how to grieve and thinking about it. I was really young when I lost 4 of my grandparents within, I believe it was 4 years of each other. And not knowing how to grieve, it definitely puts, again, that aloneness into perspective of what's after.